Hey, yeah, what's up? This disciple Marshall Occurrence Rain back up in this anti-Illuminati all day, anti-telepathy all day, anti-cop all day, anti-America all day. Yeah, so um, this video right here is going to be basically about spiritual acceleration. Spiritual acceleration, just like when you get in the car, when the gas is pushed, that's called acceleration. So spiritual acceleration happens when you know you pray, you fast, you worship God, you praise God, and you give. Okay? So um that's what I'm going to be covering. I'm going to be covering spiritual acceleration. So spiritual acceleration is something that you have to pay attention to, because if you're not accelerating, you're not moving. That's a 7. If you're not accelerating, you're not moving. So this is what happens to a lot of Christians. You know, their walk with God is like sitting in a broke down car. You're on the side of the highway, and the only difference is you don't realize you stopped going. You don't realize you stop accelerating. So you think you're still moving, but you ain't. So guess who catches up to you? The devil himself in his kingdom. That's who catches up to you. Spiritual acceleration keeps you ahead of the enemy. That's a 7. Spiritual acceleration keeps you ahead of the satanic kingdom, Satan himself, like I said, and all the systems of the world, all the people, all the humanity. Spiritual acceleration is important for that reason, and for one's own growth. If you are a preacher, you need to be spiritually accelerating so that you will have a real fresh message for your congregation. Because if you're not spiritually accelerating, the devil's going to catch up to you, and you're going to find yourself compromising. Your messages ain't going to be nothing, and ain't nobody going to feel it. You know what I'm saying? But when you spiritually accelerating, you're ahead of your congregation. That's a 7. And therefore, guess what? You can lead them. You see that part? See, if you're not spiritually accelerating, then how can you be a leader? Because in order to be a leader, guess what? I got to be ahead of you. That's a 7. You shouldn't want no leader that's not ahead of you. You shouldn't want no leader leading you when they literally cannot lead you because they're not ahead of you. That's what makes me the leader. You know what makes me the leader? Because I'm ahead of everybody. I am ahead of all of you. That's what makes me the leader. I didn't ask to be. Automatically I am, because I'm ahead of everybody. And that's how you know truly, you know how you want to do, when you want to do a leader check, let me tell you how you do it. See if they're ahead of you. Okay, so how can you be my leader and you ain't ahead of me? If you're my leader in some way, you should be ahead of me. Whether it's especially spiritually, if we're talking about spirituality here, you have to be ahead of me spiritually in order to call yourself my leader, in order to lead me. How can you lead me behind me? That part. That's a 7. And it goes also into the natural. How can these leaders of your country lead you when they behind you? Well, you're morally behind me. Well, you're marrying children in 44 states. How can you lead me? You're literally behind me, morally speaking. That's a 7. So how can you lead me? And that's why we in the shape we in now. We got people we call our leaders behind us. We trying to find our way while they got the power. They got the machine, but literally they're behind us. Morally speaking, integrity and character, they all behind us. How you my leader and you behind me? You can't lead me anywhere. And that's the difference between, that's what separates the men and the boys. If you ain't in front of me, you cannot call yourself my leader. If you're not able to instruct me and educate me significantly, then you cannot call yourself my leader or my elder. People say respect your elder. Do you know what that even means? That's not by physical age alone. That's a 7. That's based on the goods. You got the information, you got the knowledge, you got the wisdom, and you therefore are an elder. You're able to lead someone. And that's why you respect those elders, because they are able to lead you. That's why you respect your elders. Why you respect the people that they can't even lead you. And at the end of the day, a lot of times we get deceived by money and all these different things and fame. But let's do a leader check again. Are they in front of you? Are they ahead of you? Are they behind you? Now I ain't talking about just money, because see, the money will deceive you. Let's take away the money. Now, how are they leading you? Are they ahead of you? I'm not talking about just that inspirational, let me change your life, show you how to change your life and get you a bag. I ain't talking about that. I'm talking about other aspects of life. And this is where we separate leaders from inspirational people. People who inspire you. It's okay to be inspired. But I'm talking about people who can look at the situations and look at the country and look at our real geographics and lead you. Who's doing that? Who's looking around and then leading you? That's a 7. Who's looking around at all this stuff that's going on, and they have information that's ahead of everybody? That's a 7. I just showed you 44 states with child marriage. Anybody knows that? I'm all over the internet telling people that, and they don't know. Where you at? Behind me, right? That automatically makes me the leader. Because I'm looking around and I'm assessing what everything is. I'm looking at it and I'm processing it. And I'm showing you what needs to be done and what we can do and everything. This is the revolution. Because if you tell these politicians one thing, one sentence, then they'll look at you and say, what's supposed to happen then? Okay, we got child marriage. So what you gonna do about it? What's supposed to happen? Well, we don't trust you to pass any more laws, sir. We don't trust you to pass any more laws, ma'am. As of today, effective today. We're not waiting another 2 or 3 or 4 years to see what you do next. That's what happens. That's what we're doing about it. And therefore, I'm leading you. I'm showing you what you need to do. I'm looking and processing all of this information, everything that has happened. I'm looking at all of it and leading you, and I'm ahead of you through information, progressive information. Hear this part: information that will help us progress in the situation. And guess what I got to be doing in order to do this? Spiritually accelerating. That's why it's so important. And you spiritually accelerate through fasting, worshiping the Lord with your lifestyle. Because worship is twofold. It's praise, spending time, lifting your hands up, giving God glory, right? And it's also letting your life be an offering unto God. Offering up your life, as the Bible says, as a living sacrifice. That's worship. Praise is when you're telling God how almighty he is, how he's above us all, how he is God, he is Lord. And you should have no problem with submitting to God. You know who has a problem with submitting to God? People that don't know him. He's so beautiful, he's so loving, and he in what makes him God is he's almighty and he's so tender at the same time. People that think God is some taskmaster zapping you when you do wrong, although you ain't getting zapped from when you do wrong, are people that don't know him. You have to spiritually accelerate. Spiritually accelerating is vital for leaders and is vital for individuals, especially now. And it's getting harder and harder to accelerate. If spiritual acceleration was a car, Satan is throwing everything in front of the car. He's trying to throw roadblocks. He's trying to blow out your tires. He's causing gridlock. That's the main thing he's doing. Spiritual gridlock. Okay, you're going to accelerate? We'll block you. We're going to put all this stuff in front of you, all these situations in front of you. Now, even though you're trying to spiritually accelerate, you in gridlock. You just sitting there on the highway, on the freeway, and can't move. So then that's when you have to change altogether through innovation. You have to change your vehicle altogether and still accelerate. That means you got to get in the plane. You got to come out, get out the car, allow God to pick you up, and go and fly away. This is real. This ain't a game. Spiritual acceleration is important. The main thing you do it through is spiritually speaking, is prayer, progressive prayer, praying according to everything that is going on presently, and using wisdom, knowing where things are going. Progressive prayer, looking at your enemies and knowing what they're going to try to do, praying according to what they're going to try to do. That's spiritual acceleration because you've already passed them by. They don't realize you have. That's a 7. Well, when you prayed about it, you already passed them by. They don't know it yet. All the plans and everything they got going, they think they got you in gridlock. You going to sit right here and God going to send a plane. You going to fly above them. They still waiting for you to come in the car. They still waiting for you to drive by in the car, but they didn't look up at the sky. You elevated, and God elevated you. Hey, he put you in a plane and flew over their head. They didn't even know you flew by. Boom. I've been past this situation. You just didn't know it because you expected me to you expected me to accelerate one way. I accelerated another way. I know you'll get it later. It's deep. But spiritual acceleration is very important. That's why I teach doing these lifelong fasts, because these lifelong fasts, guess what? You're accelerating every day, all day. Just imagine that. You done went around the world 1,000 times because you fasting a lifelong fast. You done fly around the world 1,000 times. That's why they can't get a hold of you. That's why them devils in the satanic kingdom, in the satanic people, they can't get a hold of you because you're accelerating every day. They got to slow down. They got to sleep. Guess what? Here's the punchline. While they sleeping, we still spiritually accelerating. That's a 7 hour. Because you're doing a lifelong fast. So while you sleeping, you ain't stop accelerating. When you taking a shower, you didn't stop accelerating. When you go to work, you didn't stop accelerating. When you leave town, you didn't stop accelerating. When you go on vacation, you didn't stop accelerating. That's why I'm saying this is so important for people to get this. Check out my video, Lifelong Fasts, where you fast for life. You abstain from a food item for the rest of your life. And you give this food item to God as an offering. That's a sweet offering to give to the Lord. It has to be a sacrifice, though. You can't give up something you don't halfway eat anyway. You have to give up something that is dear to you. Now, I'm not saying give up your greatest foods and your favorite foods, all of them. I'm not telling you that, but it's got to be something that you decently like. Come on now. It has to burn. In other words, when you give it up, it got to burn. You got to say, that burn, that hurt. That's going to hurt. If you don't feel that, then you ain't offer up. You need to offer up a better sacrifice. You need to offer up a better offering. But this spiritual acceleration is very, very important, guys, because we're spiritually accelerating 24/7. This is what you need to be doing. You fasting for, twice a month. Okay, you spiritually accelerated twice a month. Imagine someone that's fasting all the time. They're all over the place. They're building whole cities. If we were talking about spiritual acceleration as far as development of community, so to speak, you're building a recreation center. They're building a whole sophisticated community because they're constantly fasting. I know. You thought what you was doing was complex and sophisticated. Now I'm showing you spiritual sophistication. That's a 7. Okay, you serve a sophisticated God. How come you simple then? I know. How come you simplistic? How come you are simplistic and you serve a sophisticated God, a complex God? That's what I'm saying. Now he's sending people to you that are spiritually sophisticated. Spiritual sophistication. Warfare sophistication. Not just pew, pew. That ain't, listen, these days, let me say something. I'm glad I'm on this subject. For everybody that think they got a gun, they good. You know what we facing. You know what you're facing. You're facing, first of all, mass shootings. When you slip it, you might not have your heater on you. You go to the grocery store and you slip it. And somebody do a mass shooting, then what you gonna do then? That's what I'm saying. You got police out here, crazy as can be too. Many of them. And you don't got your heater on you at all times, right? And then they start tripping and stuff and throwing you around and doing all kind of illegal stuff, and you out here slipping. I'm trying to show you that the weapon that you have is not good enough. I'm showing you real sophistication of weaponry, but you don't believe in it. See, everybody wants to portray a futuristic world with futuristic things. This is the futuristic world. What I'm telling you right here, in real life, I'm showing you spiritual weapons. But if you don't use them, you're not going to see spiritual results. You're not going to see the things that you've been praying about. You cannot. It's just like driving a car, right? You want to go to Vegas or you want to go to California. Let's just say, you're a Christian, you don't want to go to Vegas. So let's just say you want to go to Chicago. You want to see the two stadiums side by side. See, I done been literally to Chicago. I done accelerated in a bus to the point where I accelerated to see Chicago, and I seen the two stadiums side by side. How you know somebody's been to Chicago? They know certain things about Chicago. They seen it with their own eyes. It's the same thing with spiritual acceleration. If I accelerate to a certain place, I've seen certain things, so I've seen it with my own two eyes, so I can speak about it. This is where people spiritually elevate and accelerate, and they get divine information, and they come back to you and they tell you things that you couldn't possibly have known on your own. They tell you things they couldn't have possibly have known on their own. But when you spiritually accelerate, let's say you want to go to Chicago and see the two stadiums side by side, right? You in New York, you're gonna drive from New York to Chicago, right? You don't even, let's just say you in Brooklyn. You hit 10 blocks in Brooklyn. Talking about you going to Chicago. You ain't even got to Manhattan. You ain't even got to the city. You ain't even got to through Manhattan to get out of New York. But you in Brooklyn, 10 blocks down the street, talking about I'm going to Chicago. It's the same thing with people spiritually speaking. You ain't spiritually accelerate. You talking about you going somewhere, but you just put your foot on the gas just a little bit and you only going 10 blocks. You 10 blocks away from where you started. Like a drunk person. Yeah, I don't listen, you shouldn't be drinking and driving. That's a 7. Every time you out here doing this reckless stuff, you like, spiritually speaking, you like a drunk person trying to accelerate. You gonna catch collisions and you ain't going nowhere. Purity, hear this part good. While we're on the subject, I'm getting drunk and intoxicated, rather. On that subject, purity is going to be your greatest weapon in spiritual acceleration. That's a 7 hour. That's why the devil fights purity so much in America. You got, everybody was talking about, you got liquor stores on every corner. They might say now these days you got smoke shops on everywhere. You got sex stores and everything in between. It's all you think it's just for money, but it's also a grid that combats your purity. I know you didn't see it that way, did you? Well, if it wasn't there, guess how likely you are going to do it. If you don't see liquor stores and smoke shops, guess how likely you are to do it? Not at all, because it ain't available. You don't feel like going 20, 30 blocks to go do that. That's what I'm trying to show you. These things are made available to you. They're there to combat your spiritual purity. Your purity is more important than anything. Right now in 2022, going into 2023, your spiritual purity is more important. A lot of y'all don't smoke enough weed. You don't smoke enough for the nations. You should be done with it. You need to sober up. Go have a smoothie. A smoothie make you feel good. Your mind feel lifted up. Get some energy drink. Some energy, some energy tonics and stuff. Start getting into that. Natural ways to get boost of energy and well-being. Start taking things to give you a strong sense of well-being. Magnesium give you a strong sense of well-being. B12 will give you a strong sense of well-being. Those two right there help you right off the cuff. But going ahead, you, as God's people, first I must address, we cannot be out here high and drunk all the time at all. Talking about we spiritually accelerating and elevating. No. Nope. You trust and believe this. You will elevate more to your surprise if you're pure. I done been on both sides of the situation. And when I'm pure, I'm not smoking. When I quit smoking cigarettes and tobacco altogether, I spiritually elevate. It's a purity that comes from that. When you stop getting intoxicated excessively, you will notice, if you have a real relationship with God and you're fasting and you're seeking the Lord, you're worshiping, you're in the Word, you're listening to ministers, you will notice a heightened, a good vibration on you, if you will. And you will notice results, spiritual breakthroughs, spiritual results. That's why he fights us so hard with impurities, to stop your spiritual acceleration. Because you cannot accelerate, hear this part very closely, you cannot accelerate smoking cigarettes and doing all this stuff. Smoking cigars, smoking cigarettes, and talking about, I'm going to fast and I'm going to pray and I'm going to worship and praise the Lord. You can't do it. It's going to hold you back. It's going to be like having bricks on your back. I'm telling you, it's going to be like having bricks on your back. You know how it feels to have bricks on your back? Big cement blocks on your back. That's the best analogy I can show you. We got to stop having Smoky Joe religion. That's what I call it. The kind of religion where we go to church and then we smoke Black and Milds when we come out to church. As soon as we come out, we smoking blacks. As soon as we come out, we smoking Newports. As soon as we come out, we smoking Marlboros. For other races, for other cultures. As soon as you come out, you smoking. You smoking all the cigarettes you smoke. We don't need, listen, Smoky Joe religion is the reason why we're here now. I've been there. I've been that type of individual. Smoke some weed, drank, whatever, excessively, whatever, smoking cigarettes, and trying to go about a spiritual journey at the same time. Listen, I'm telling you, man, I can't speak. I speak according to the masses. I can't speak for individuals that may elevate or feel that they elevate or spiritually accelerate. I know God's system. God's system is one way. He's not going to have you out here drunk, talking about, and have you, and then spiritually navigate you. We're talking about spiritual navigation here. It doesn't even make sense. It's like an oxymoron. Okay, how God is spiritually navigating you and you drunk? You drinking and driving then. You spiritually drinking and driving, which means you're going to get a collision. You know why you're going to get a collision? Because Satan sees that you out here in his world, and he's going to give you a collision. That's a 7. You're drinking and driving. You out here praying, seeking the Lord, but then you getting drunk and you getting high, you're doing all these things, and then you get a collision. See, this happened to a lot of famous people. It happened to them real bad because Satan feel that they're one of his children. And then you go to church, and now you crying, you go home, you cry secretly to yourself, and you change your life because you 100. You like, sure, I'm changing. I'm done with this. And Satan see that. You're like, oh, I hate to do this, but I got to give him a collision. You cannot work for his kingdom and then talk about, I want to serve the Lord. He gonna give you a collision. The only way you're gonna stop that collision, I'm telling you, is if you give God, you literally give Jesus the wheel. That's a 7. You like that, don't you? But if you out here drinking and excessively and smoking and smoking cigarettes and all of that, you're not giving Jesus the wheel. You got the wheel, and you're drinking and driving. I'm showing you the truth. This is why you get spiritual collisions. You see these famous people, and and some of them are coming to God, and you don't know it because all you see is how Satan is using them. That's all you see. But you don't know what God is. You don't know what they're doing, and you don't know how they want to come to God. And they've been doing it a little bit. They've been spending time fasting a little bit. They've been spending time seeking the Lord a little bit, reading the Word a little bit. But then they go back out into the world, doing what Satan wanted them to do, and he set up a collision. Oh, I'm gonna tell you something that none of these rappers who know Tupac personally. I don't know Tupac. I never knew Tupac personally. But I'm gonna tell you one part of the story that I noticed